That morning, the early sunlight filtered through the narrow crack in the door, but it wasn't enough to dispel the cold that was seeping into every fiber of Wen's being. She opened her eyes after a long night, unsure when she had fallen asleep. The first thing that struck her mind was emptiness, followed by a quiet sadness like a hazy mist. The person she had trusted, whom she had considered her last resort, turned out to be the one who dragged her life into the darkest depths. At only 19 years old, she had to run away, had to taste all the fear, humiliation, and bitterness of life. A youth that should have been beautiful was now filled with nameless gray emptiness. In the small corner of the house, sweat beaded on her forehead, yet she felt cold as dew. The unusual chill in the hot afternoon made her body tremble slightly. Her face was pale, her lips dry, and the hammering headaches that struck her from time to time made her dizzy. She guessed she had a fever that came as suddenly as the tragedies that had befallen her life. Tears fell naturally. She didn't know when they had started. She wasn't crying because she was weak, but because she was too tired, too lonely. As her body felt like it was about to collapse, she wished there was someone beside her, just a little concern. A hand on her forehead would be enough to make her feel less lonely. Suddenly she remembered him, the man who had rescued her from darkness twice, the one who had shielded her with his own body from the thugs and her stepfather, the one she hadn't had the chance to thank, hadn't had the chance to say anything to. How was he doing now? His wounds, did they still hurt? Thinking of that, her heart was filled with an indescribable heaviness. The excruciating headache made it impossible for her to sit for long. Wen lay down, curling up to soothe her body, which was burning with fever. Everything gradually faded from her tired eyes. Elsewhere, the construction site was missing its director. People only knew he hadn't come today, but no one knew he was dragging his feet heavily through the empty house because of the deep purple wound on his leg. He knelt down on the porch, bandaging the wound himself. His hands were rough but careful, each movement slow and determined. The dull pain flared with every movement, but he ignored it. All he could think of was Wen, her panicked eyes, her face pale with fear, her small figure running away in the dark night. He feared something else would happen. A strange sense of unease clung to him. He knew he couldn't stand by. He knew that only he could protect her at this moment. Thinking this, he forced himself to stand up, leaving behind the pain that clung to his every step. Around noon, he walked into a small roadside cafe. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His breathing was a little rapid, but his eyes remained determined. He took out his phone and called the only person he believed could help him at this moment. Soon after, that person appeared, a tall, thin man with a stern face but kind eyes. He was an old classmate of his, now a successful lawyer. After a few brief inquiries, the director recounted everything: Wen's circumstances, her troubled family, the shady debts, the stepfather's unreasonable pursuit. His words were filled with tension and anger, as if he were struggling with his own emotions as he spoke. The lawyer listened, his face grave. He understood how serious the problem was. After a moment of thought, he nodded firmly, without hesitation. He promised to help, to investigate everything thoroughly, to find the truth and bring justice to Wen. That promise eased the director's mind somewhat. The two continued to chat a little about work and life, then his friend left. He remained alone in the coffee shop, sitting silently for a very long time. His gaze was distant, but his anxiety had lessened. At least now, he knew he was not alone in the fight to protect Wen, and he believed, as long as his feet remained steady, as long as his heart still had the strength to care for that girl, he would not give up. Returning to the small house, the coconut leaves outside the porch still swayed gently in the afternoon breeze, peaceful as if no disturbance had ever touched this place. Yet, amidst that tranquility, Uyen suddenly sat up with a start, her heart pounding. Cold sweat soaked her hair, her breath coming in gasps, as if she had just escaped from some dark, murky shadow. The dream she had just had made her limbs tremble. In her dream, her stepfather and a group of strangers had come, banging on the door, dragging her away amid screams. The scene was so real, so vivid, that Uyen wondered, was it just a dream because she was too tired? Or was it a sign that something terrible was about to happen? Unable to stay in the stifling room, she quickly stepped out onto the porch and sat down on the rotten wooden steps to calm her racing heart. The wind from the pond blew cool and cold, carrying the strong scent of wild grass. But the unease in her heart grew stronger by the minute. She bowed her head and clenched her fists. She owed him so much. She knew that her appearance had turned the director's life upside down. From a quiet, hard-working man, he was now injured, worried, and rushing into danger just to save her from her stepfather and the thugs. Uyen felt her heart tighten. She didn't want him to get into more trouble because of her. After a moment of hesitation, she stood up and went inside to find a small piece of paper. The pen trembled in her hand. Each stroke cut into her heart. "Thank you for everything. I don't dare bother you anymore. I'll go back to my home. Don't worry about me. I wish you peace. Uyen." Reading the letter one last time, tears fell from her eyes, blurring a corner of the words. She tried to wipe them away, folded the letter neatly, and tucked it into the door crack. The door of the small house closed behind her with a heavy thud. Uyen stood still for a few seconds, her heart in turmoil. She knew she was lying to him. She couldn't go home. She didn't know where she was going either. But leaving here was probably the only way to protect him. Wearing her worn-out sandals, she walked along the red dirt road streaked with afternoon sunlight. Each step was light, but her heart was heavy as stone. When she reached the path that turned onto the main road, she turned back to look at the small house one more time. "You live well. I will definitely repay you. As long as I live, I will find a way to come back and repay you." A whispered promise, sent into the silent void. Uyen's small figure disappeared into the long, lonely road, lost like a fallen leaf in the sunny season. She walked without knowing where to return, where she belonged. And Uyen, once again, wandered through life, alone, weak, and completely unaware that, on the other side, the director was anxiously trying to restore justice for her. Meanwhile, in the spacious and well-appointed house, Bin sat leaning back in his chair. His cold, sharp gaze swept across every corner of the room. He was Mr. Chin's creditor, the man who had indirectly pushed Uyen down a dark path she never wanted to walk. He picked up the phone and dialed the number with an impatient look on his face. As soon as the other end picked up, Bin immediately barked in a cold voice, "The debt is overdue. If you can't bring Uyen back to marry me, then I'll seize the house as collateral. Don't blame me." Mr. Chin on this end just clutched the phone, unable to say a word. His face darkened with exhaustion, his eyes filled with bloodshot veins. After hearing those words, he remained silent, then hung up as a temporary escape from reality. He sat motionless on the porch. A man who had lived half his life had fallen into despair because of his own wrong decision. He sighed, wondering, "If only I didn't have this debt. Now I would be peacefully holding my grandchild. How much easier it would be." Meanwhile, at the village entrance, the director was hurriedly walking through the narrow alleys. He stopped at each gate, politely asking for directions to Mr. Chin's house. His gait was uneven due to an old injury, but his eyes were still full of determination. Finally, the dirt road leading to Mr. Chin's small house appeared before his eyes. Mr. Chin was still sitting there blankly, unaware that someone was approaching. It wasn't until the director stood in the yard that he looked up in surprise. His surprise quickly turned to anger. Remembering how he had saved Uyen, ruining his and Bin's plan, he immediately stood up, ready to rush over and vent his anger. But the director quickly put his hand up to stop him, his voice calm. "I came here to talk things through clearly. I don't want things to go any further." Mr. Chin breathed heavily, his eyes still full of resentment. But the determination on his face made him pause. After a tense argument, he made his intention clear: to help Uyen escape the shady debt and forced marriage. Realizing he had no other choice, Mr. Chin sat down, letting out a sigh. He looked at him and silently reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone and pressing a number. "Here is Bin's phone number. The only way to resolve this is to find him." The director quickly wrote down the number and nodded. Before leaving, he said one sentence in a firm voice: "I hope from now on, you will let Uyen go." After saying that, he turned away, leaving behind Mr. Chin, who was bewildered and confused, unable to understand why he would go to such lengths for a girl who had nothing to do with him. But he also secretly hoped that he would resolve the situation smoothly and save his family from the danger posed by Bin at this moment. The director returned to the small house in the afternoon breeze, blowing through the rows of coconut trees. In his hands were several small flower pots, the kinds of flowers Uyen had once loved. Once said she would plant to add color and fragrance to the small house, so that this place would not just be a temporary shelter, but a real home. He quickened his pace, his heart racing, as if he would see Uyen standing on the porch, smiling her familiar, gentle smile. As soon as he stepped into the yard, he called out loudly, "Uyen, I'm home!" But the only response was the wind blowing through the leaves. Not a single soul in sight. He stopped. This silence was too strange. He walked straight into the porch, put down the flower pots, then walked around looking for her. Nothing. No sound. Not even the small footprints that used to walk around the garden every day. As he had done every day, he sat down on the wooden chair in front of the door, where Uyen used to sit and tie her messy hair after watering the vegetables. He looked at the rows of vegetables still wet with the night dew, then watered them himself, as if to keep her warmth somewhere around here. But the more he did, the more uneasy his heart felt. He quickly got up and ran into the house. The wooden door was ajar. He pushed hard, and then he froze. On the door, a small letter was neatly pinned in Uyen's familiar, shaky handwriting. He reached out and tremblingly opened it. "I'm going back to my family. Thank you for helping me so much these past few days. One day, I will repay this kindness." Just a few short lines, but they stabbed straight into his heart. He let go and the letter fluttered in the wind. Uyen was gone for real, and maybe she would never return to this house again. A heavy sadness rose up, pulling him down to sit at the small table. His eyes scanned the house, which was unfinished but had been filled with Uyen's warmth every day. Now, everything felt painfully empty. He took a deep breath, looked up at the thatched roof, then at the mud walls, all of which bore the marks of Uyen's care. After a long while, he stood up. Even though she was gone, he couldn't let this place fall into ruin. He carried each pot of flowers out to the yard, carefully dug small holes in the ground, placed each root down, and covered them with soil with both hands. It was like sowing a new hope, fragile but sincere, that one day Uyen would return. He watered them. The drops spread across the damp soil, while his heart felt heavy as lead. While tending to the vegetable beds Uyen had planted, he imagined a beautiful day when vibrant flowers would bloom all over the yard, and the little girl would stand in the garden, smiling brightly. That image made his chest tighten, painful yet warm. But he knew there was something more important to do. He stood silently on the porch for a moment longer, looking at everything one last time. Then he clenched his teeth, pulled the letter from his pocket, and left. Just as he had told Mr. Chin, upon leaving the small house, the director immediately called the number Mr. Chin had just given him. He arranged to meet Bin at a small roadside coffee shop, a place far from the noise, where only the wind rustled through the leaves, foreshadowing a difficult confrontation. When Bin walked in, his glaring eyes darted around before settling on the director, who was sitting calmly at the corner of the table. He pulled out a chair, sat down opposite him, and tapped his hand hard on the table as if to show his dominance. "Why did you call me here? A debt is a debt. If Mr. Chin doesn't pay, I'll take the house. Or send the girl back to me, that's all." His voice was sharp without a hint of compromise. The director had anticipated this attitude. He put down his coffee cup, looked up at Bin, his eyes calm but sharp. "I know very well that the debt between you and Mr. Chin is not simple. And I also know that you used that debt to force Uyen into marriage." Bin laughed sarcastically, his voice full of defiance. "So what if you know? That's the law of life." The director did not respond immediately. He took out his phone and dialed a familiar number. The lawyer's voice rang clearly through the speakerphone, and he deliberately let Bin hear every word. "Please confirm this for me. The debt you asked me to look into belongs to someone named Bin. According to the documents I've collected, this debt shows signs of fraud, interest rates exceeding the legal limit, plus coercion, threats, extortion, and this Bin has a criminal record, correct?" The person on the other end of the line replied without hesitation. "All the files are clear. If necessary, I can send them directly to the authorities today. The director turned off the speakerphone and leaned toward Bin. No matter how powerful you are, the law is still stronger. Do you want to continue pushing Uyen to the edge? Or do you want to end everything here? At that moment, Bin's face turned pale. His hands, which had been lying aggressively on the table, now trembled slightly. He understood clearly. With a criminal record like his, if the case went to court, he would have no way out. No longer arrogant as usual, Bin bowed his head, his voice choked up. I understand. I was wrong. The director stood up. He didn't need to say much. He simply extended his hand, a handshake like a warning to someone who had just reached the end of the road. Stop it. Don't touch Uyen anymore. From now on, everything stops here. After saying that, he turned and walked out of the cafe, his demeanor calm, but his heart in turmoil. Because the person he wanted to protect was still nowhere to be found. Behind him, Bin sat motionless, frozen like someone who had just awakened from a trance. He had never imagined he would be pushed to this point, and he had never imagined someone would stand up to protect Uyen so fiercely. The encounter ended in silence, but it was a silence that forced the villain to retreat and opened a new hope for Uyen.